Hey everybody, Todd with 306 Foxbody. Hey guys, there's something I want to talk about, something I've been thinking about. Back in the late 80s or early 90s, there was quite a few speed parts available, and there obviously still is today. But some of these speed parts have become obsolete. You just can't find them. Prices have gone up. One of my favorites is the Hartmann intake. You know, maybe it does kill low end torque, but man, I just love looking at it. It's a budget, cool plastic upper intake. Um, uh, Good friend of mine, Rob in Winnipeg, we were talking about things like this, and I said how I had a Hartmann intake back in the day, back in probably the late 90s and early 2000s. I had a Hartmann on my car with the 289 heads, X303 cam, and I said I'd like to find one again. I would just love to have one. You know, I'm not going to pay $700 for a plastic upper intake, but for a couple $100 or whatever a fair price is, I'd consider it. But try and find one, obviously. And then seemed like a couple days later, after Rob and I talked, Brutal came up with an awesome video about the Hartmann intake, probably about a year ago, and how it's the holy grail of, you know, kind of neat older intakes. And it was just an awesome video we had. It really took me back to when I had mine, and I thought it'd be cool to have another one, or to get another one. And you know, another intake that's really cool is a Cobra intake. You know, obviously a tubular GT40, but a Cobra is a really cool intake. An Explorer intake definitely flows really well. It's an amazing bang for the buck. Even though an Explorer intake may flow just like a Cobra intake, it's not the same as a Cobra. The Cobra intake, it just that extra look to it. It is what it is, and it has that nostalgia behind it. And you know, if I found another Hartmann intake, I'd probably clean it up and put it on the coffee table beside where I watch TV and just stare at it, because I like stuff like that. So I'm wondering, what do you guys think if they repopped a Cobra intake, or if they repopped a Hartmann, or of course Comp Cams did that one as well. I wonder what it would take for Comp Cams to go back to whoever had the mold that made them for Comp, if they could repop a certain amount of them. I'm thinking if they repopped some of these retro speed parts, you know, it's not going to be the same as the original one, because the original one has the original casting, original part number. But here's my idea. What if, like most of us are on a budget, what if a guy got a Explorer lower intake, poured it a little bit, but what if some company made a Cobra upper intake that you could bolt to an Explorer lower? Now they could make it out of cast aluminum, but just think of this. How many intake manifolds that we see today are made out of plastic? What if a company repopped a Cobra upper intake? And you know, if they sold it for $4.99 or $5.99 or something that is affordable, and if they repop something like this, and especially make it out of plastic or aluminum, and give it a textured finish like the factory one would have, and you could paint it whatever color you want, probably silver. They could even make it so it even flows more air right out of the box. Like a performance intake, I'm just guessing, is probably really good numbers, especially when you see the ones that are ported flow close to 300 CFM. So if they could make something like that right out of the box, a plastic or cast aluminum upper that flowed really well, the price would be right. You get a Explorer lower, do some mild porting on that, you'd have a really cool piece. And you know, not everybody has $1,000 or $1,500 to spend on an intake manifold, so that's something to think about. And I always thought if they repopped a Comp intake, I'd probably still get a Hartmann sticker made up for the top of it, just because. It was kind of neat. I was talking to my buddy Shane today, and I didn't realize he's the one I sold my Hartman to, and I'm pretty sure I probably sold it 20 years ago for about 50 bucks, I'm sure. So that intake's long gone on the Calypso coupe that Shane had it on. But that's just my thoughts. If what you guys think about repopping performance parts, and we'll call it budget performance parts. So anybody that's been stockpiling the original casting number, high value performance parts, I don't think the value of those is really going to get hurt, because a repopped or reproduced part or a copycat part will never have the same value as the original. So for the purists out there that want to get an original casting GT40 or Cobra intake for their restoration project, or if a guy's redoing a 93 Cobra, obviously you want the right numbers matching, correct part number on there. But I thought it'd be kind of neat. And just with some retro speed parts, check this out. This is an old Pro-M 77mm air meter. Like, it's huge, guys. I just think this is such a cool piece. And check this out. Here's this Pro-M 77mm air meter. Here's an air meter off of a 96 Mustang. Just quite the difference in size overall. Like, you can't even compare the two. Here's another Pro-M air meter. And just like this other one, the air filter actually, a K&N air filter actually bolts to it. So that's kind of neat. I was just checking out my Lightning 351 lower. Nice huge ports on it. Let's face it, these just aren't a very common intake, and it's kind of a neat piece if you're building a 351. And then again, the Explorer intake, I've never had an Explorer lower intake, but compared to a 302 Cobra lower or GT40 lower, they're so similar. I'd like to get them side by side to see what the difference is. It's likely not much, because from what I understand, the flow numbers are pretty decent with them. They're very comparable to a GT40 or a Cobra. My big question is, do you think that anybody's going to start repopping and reproducing or making a copycat of a retro performance part? I think, not every part, but if you took a part that was quite successful back in the day, 20 years ago or even a little bit longer, if they repopped it, I think guys would be interested. And especially to have a budget option like a Cobra plastic or cast aluminum upper that you could throw on an Explorer lower. I'd probably buy something like that, because when you pop the hood, even though it's a repop or a copycat, if it flowed decent air, guys would buy it. Like, if it flowed more than the original, I think guys would buy it. Let me know what you guys think. It's just a short, sweet video on performance parts. If they're going to repop any of them in the near future, make it budget friendly. It's good for the guys that are just starting off in the Foxbody game. And even for some of us that, we're not a total purist where we're happy to put a budget part on our car. As long as it performs well, good bang for the buck is what we're after. I think there's a market there for it, and that's my thoughts. Let me know what you guys are thinking. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Cheers.